In January 1998, the Maryland Institute College of Art's inaugural Exhibition Development Seminar organized a landmark retrospective of Elizabeth Talford Scott's vibrant mixed-media fiber works. The exhibition brought significant recognition to the artist and modeled innovative, community-centered approaches to curation and interpretation. 25 years later, students worked with cultural organizations and colleges across Baltimore to celebrate Talford Scott from November 2023 through May 2024.
Although these institutions have different missions, different goals, different collections, we all have a commonality that we love art, and that we love the city of Baltimore, and that we want to educate in terms of the arts. EDS gives you a lot of skills in terms of work, but also gives you the philosophies and the structure of how to curate exhibitions, whether that's working in communities, selecting the pieces, as well as the foundations and the research that goes into creating an exhibition that speaks to the whole community or the whole person.
The Exhibition Development Seminar, EDS, is really the A to Z of understanding how to put together an exhibition.
I would define EDS, because I've gone through it before, as a very immersive, hands-on experience. You really get to see what it's like to be a curator at its most basic principles.
Because I think curating is almost a work of art in itself, right? You have found this magic in these pieces, but now you have to figure out how to present them so that magic, is felt by everyone else.
EDS is an intense class. It's not just a class, it's a moment that teaches not just exhibition design, not just curatorial design, but the museum structure.
So as well as each of the students being a curator, they also take on roles, and it really varies from year to year depending on the number of students. There's the marketing role and the graphic design role and project management, and if there's enough students, there's programming, and there's all the things that go into making a successful exhibition. And they'll install it themselves. They understand what it takes. They understand all aspects of it. The agency that they're given and the control over the process really empowers them. They are making the decisions, so they, in a way, are dealing with the consequences.
Agency is really important in the class. You're a student curator, not a student, but a student curator. They have the ability to work with the curators, suggest some pieces that should be in the exhibition and why, but mostly also the public programming. How will the public program talk to the community? How are we going to invite the community in? The students have agency over all of that.
As you do the research, as you think of the colors, the fonts, everything, you have to think about everybody who's coming, everybody who you want to come, everybody who you think is going to come, right? We just rode down North Avenue. What about some of those people coming here?
Engaging the community is very important when it comes to art, because there is a lot of art within the museum, outside of the museum, and there are a lot of people who don't get to experience either one of those, either coming to the museum or the museum going out.
That's something EDS and curatorial practice at MICA really stress, is working within community and doing that equitably, authentically, what's the other word I'm looking for, organically.
So my associate Pat Halley and I were engaged by Maryland Institute College of Art to come in and to do some coaching and some consulting for this particular EDS course. We were asked to come in to do some work with the instructor, Deyane, and her students in how to begin to think about how to make art spaces more inclusive, and then to work with the students to hopefully make the spaces, make the installations that they're putting up all around Baltimore inclusive, and to keep those questions and those conversations in mind that we're having with them along and about.
This year the class accompanies undergraduate as well as graduate students from institutions all over the city. We have students from JHU, students from Morgan as well, in addition to MICA. So this year we are creating 8 different exhibitions and 9 different public programs at 9 different venues across the city. And they're all going to be free and showcase at least one piece of Elizabeth Talford Scott's in communication or in conversation with works around it in the places. They're going to happen at Coppin State University at the Cryor Art Gallery, Maryland Institute College of Art inside the Decker Gallery, at the Maryland Center for History and Culture, the Walters Art Museum, Hopkins George Peabody Library, the Reginald F. Museum, the Peale Museum in partnership with Arts Every Day, Morgan State University's James E. Lewis Museum of Art, and the community space at the Baltimore Museum of Art. The community initiative was birthed from George Sissel, who founded EDS as well as the curatorial practice program here at MICA. The first exhibition that EDS had in the 90s was with Elizabeth Talford Scott's work. And since then, EDS has worked with different institutions around the city. And so JHU, Morgan, Coppin, they were all one of those institutions. Same thing as MCHC, Peale, the Reginald F. And JELMA. They've all worked with EDS before. So what George wanted to do was have a retrospective of that exhibition with Elizabeth Talford Scott, but also a retrospective of the EDS partners. EDS is a 6-credit course. It takes place over the fall and the spring semester. It's a year-long commitment. We meet for 3 hours, and it's flexible based on students' needs, but we're trying to promote a hybrid model where students are working online for a brief bit of time with myself, with each other, and our graduate teaching assistant, and then in the afternoon they're able to work with their community partners and their mentors. And so the mentors have made themselves accessible to the students, mostly on Fridays, but other times throughout the week, to work with them, talk with them about their plans and expectations for the exhibition, as well as how some things work in their museum, because every institution is different. And the beauty about EDS this year are that the different venues all have a degree of difficulty, I would say. Some community partners have their exhibition all planned out. They know some things that they want to do, the pieces that they've already chosen. Other venues were able to start from scratch. So depending on how much a student might want to learn or what some different experiences they might have at these institutions, they might have chose one versus the other. What we tried to do this semester was give students the opportunity to see all the venues, understand what we're doing, and then select what venues they might want to, or community partners they might want to work with based on the skills that they want to learn. So some people want to work with children, so they went to the Peale. Some people wanted to work with acquisitions and learn that process of the interior process of acquiring things, so they came to MCHC, who is purchasing abstract #1 of Elizabeth Talford Scott.
I think I was set on the Reginald F. Lewis since the venue crawl, actually. I guess just being in the space, like seeing how oriented it was towards like furthering Black voices and making space for Black artists made me feel really inclined to just like be here.
It's been very good. It's been a lot of taking notes and being able to transfer that energy into the artwork. We have to have thorough information and use that in a creative context.
I hope to gain some responsibility, being able to like keep a plan and enforce it, and help Reginald F. Lewis to start the exhibition and be like, yeah, I was part of that, I did that.
It's energizing working with the students because they bring a different perspective. We're very routine, we've been doing this a long time, so we don't necessarily have that fresh perspective.
Collaboration has been so key, which is not really something you can be taught, it's something you have to experience many times over with many different people.
Collaboration is, I think, what makes EDS unique. We get to go behind the scenes as undergraduate and grad students and work closely within the collections and with curators. We have that one-on-one time with them. A lot of people may not have that, but we have that accessibility here.
You know, just reaching out to other large organizations can be a little daunting. Once they've done it, then they'll have the confidence moving forward to do it again.
I think that what makes EDS special this year, especially, is being able to provide this access to other institutions and other students outside of MICA. Having the accessibility in EDS is important because I didn't have that accessibility growing up. I didn't have that until I got to MICA. But having this experience while you're in class and while you're in school, it just further can progress your career. Having the connections with people, learning about these different systems or different processes that, wouldn't you know, put you ahead of your peers. And I feel as though that EDS really, really can help you understand that, like this on-the-job learning, things you can't learn in a book. A lot of schools have museum programs and different things like that, but not necessarily the connections that they need to have to allow students this access so that they can progress their careers once they're out of school. What it symbolizes for me, that we're able to add institutions in that we've worked with in the past, symbolizes to me a family, a support system. And so for us to come together on this same platform to think about Elizabeth Talford Scott's work and the many different conversations that we can have at our institutions is a beautiful thing, because we're all different. And so to see what the students come up with, what the institutions have planned, or what their expectations are, is going to be a beautiful thing to see when all this comes together, because I don't know what we're going to create. It shows inclusivity, it shows diversity, and it shows support for the arts, for EDS, and that they believe in this mission that we've been working for and working towards in terms of curatorial practice. I hope the students learn more than just putting together exhibitions, to be honest with you. I feel like, to me, that's almost the easy part. To put together exhibitions, you can make the checklist, you can figure out what to do. But in terms of like really building the relationships, talking and communicating with people, their wants, their needs, and then interpreting that information to visually represent to people, that's the difficult part. Getting all these voices in, learning from your peers, those are the things I want the students to really get out of it. It's community, and it's sharing, and it's working on these different ideas together. I think that's the part for me, the collaborative work that I really hope students get out of it. We often need to get out, and we need to get out and work collaboratively.
It's really wild because the exhibition development seminar, all the different shows that have happened, although it's the same program, they feel vastly different. The exhibitions stand on their own.
This is a tall order that we're doing right now. It seems impossible. I'm not gonna lie to you. This seems impossible that we could do this many exhibitions and public programs in a very short amount of time. But working with the group of people that we're working with this year, the students as well as the community partners, have shown nothing but top-tier professionalism. And everyone is really pushing forward and making this work. And I know that we can do it. We have different ideas. We have different goals in what we're doing. But what we're doing is a beautiful thing. And I think this is a historic thing. I hope everyone in the class knows that this is like an historic collaboration where 9 institutions are getting on the same page for one mission. I don't know if I've seen that, but this is a beautiful thing that for at least for a few months, we'll all be celebrating Elizabeth Talford Scott and her amazing work and what she's done over the years. The students might not realize it now, but I think once this is over, we'll all see just how impactful this class is going to be on our lives after it's over. Install is my favorite thing. You're creating, like it's coming to life. The things that you had in your mind, the things that you produced on SketchUp, the things that you drew out on your notepad, like it's coming to life. The paint is coming up. You know, you get to get some of that frustration out when you're hitting those nails in. And so I love install, and I think it's one of the most crucial times as a curator.
In so many ways, the process of installing the artwork collaboratively in your space is the most joyful, exciting, and intense part of the curatorial process. There's so much opportunity and so much possibility, and also constraints that must be worked within, whether this is architecture, the capacity of your team, figuring out how to do the most beautiful installation that centers the artwork is the #1 goal. Each of the exhibitions at each partner site has its own context and its own goals. So to answer those questions within that context is a really exciting opportunity to flex differences in approach and method. Well, when the Elizabeth Talford Scott exhibition opened to the public at the Baltimore Museum of Art, we experienced this beautiful kind of collective outpouring of community participation. And this was really because the exhibition brought together thought and work that the exhibition development seminar, all of the student curators at all of their different sites had been engaged in thinking about as well. So Deyane Moses, all of the students, and all of our partners at the 8 sites across Baltimore City came to show support for our guest curator, George Sissel, and also to spend time with the work of Elizabeth Talford Scott here in the galleries on the opening day.
Towards the end of the semester, we were submitting our drafts before we submitted our final proposals. We were able to get feedback from each other as well as our community partners, but one of the most important critiques that we had was with Joyce, Elizabeth's daughter. And so she was able to tell us more about the pieces that were selected and how they fit in conversation with the institutions or with the ideas that we had. So that was really, really great that the students were able to speak with her, because it changed a lot of their perspectives about what they were doing and let them know they could go big or they need to scale back.
I can't underline enough that you're talking about the life of an actual person who was not mired in academia. And where are you going to be showing this? Museums and schools, right? So how do you say to your viewer that she was an ass kicker in a different milieu?
I've seen the exhibitions grow as well as the students grow in confidence and within their ideas and their abilities. Where we're at right now is it's time to put the rubber to the road, as they say. We are in full swing. And so what we need to do is we need to get the vinyl printed, we need to get the handout printed, we need to get the walls patched up, we need to get the paint on the walls, we need to get all the artwork to come in, and then we gotta put those things together. Some institutions have larger spaces than others, some exhibitions have more works than others. You can go from 2 or 3 works to 300 works at different exhibitions. So we're really gonna get together and bond together to finish these exhibitions. So for instance, if you're at the Walters and your installation is already done or being completed by art handlers per se, because again, every institution has their own needs and protocols for how they do things there, you can get that hands-on experience at the Peale.
My exhibition plans are to let this be an example of Elizabeth Talford Scott telling a story about her life. So the title of the exhibition is American Africanisms, the Musings of Elizabeth Talford Scott. So everything was designed with Elizabeth Talford Scott in mind. Everything from the font, the text, the colors was designed thinking about her.
I think when many people think about putting up a show, they think about pretty pictures hanging on a wall, and that's about it. But what we learn is you're dealing with physicality and space, not only with the object, but you're dealing with the space that you're inviting people to come and view your objects. There's math. You got to figure out how much space you're working with, how many people can fit into that space, those kinds of things.
One of the things that spoke to me when I was doing research was the fact that she was dyslexic. One of the ways in which people with dyslexia communicate is through art.
Her quilts are related to the universe. Her quilts are related to science. Her quilts are related to cosmology, health. We're often taught that literature comes in the form of words, but for some of us, literature comes in the form of griots, of storytelling, of familial storytelling.
I say this a lot. Each stitch is a word. Stitches become a sentence. They become a paragraph. These are ways of writing for pre-literate people.
This is the way Elizabeth Talford Scott expressed herself. In learning more about her, I noticed that she would sketch her work before she actually did the sewing. So to me, this was her writing or her expressing herself through her work and talking about her life, and that's what I wanted to showcase in this exhibition. One of the objectives of this space is to make fine art accessible to the community. And what she's created definitely falls into that guideline of fine art. I think it's important for, especially in the Baltimore community, the surrounding community, to see one of their own in this type of space, to have it showcased in this way, so that anyone who's coming through can see it and say, okay, I can do it too.
Our exhibition was a collaboration between MICA's EDS and Arts Everyday's 10x10 exhibit that they do every year. It was held in the Peale Museum.
But the Kaleidoscope Changing Perspectives exhibit is really centered around bringing together the community, especially the Baltimore public school students, and Elizabeth Talford Scott's message and her work to allow artwork to blossom within the community, especially within art education, and to bring together those ideas and celebrate art education and art in general. All the work that we get is from Baltimore City public school students, and the open call goes out open to everybody that is a student in Baltimore City public schools, K through 12, and anybody can submit a 10x10 piece of artwork under the theme Kaleidoscope.
So our philosophy was mainly we wanted to honor Elizabeth by giving her a space that wasn't as busy because, again, we received over 300 works from students, and that meant that there would be a lot of artwork, creating that sort of dialogue. And we didn't want the artworks to fight with each other for attention, so we had to make very important choices about where we were hanging things up. In one room, we tried to mostly keep all the wall hanging pieces. On the other room, we had a chandelier created out of kaleidoscopes. We had a portrait done of the artist Elizabeth Talford Scott, and we decided to keep her piece with those. We also didn't want Elizabeth's work to overshadow a lot of student work. And even the piece we chose by Elizabeth Talford Scott was one of the more visually simple pieces. Even though, again, knowing Elizabeth, it was very well made, there was a lot of details if you look closely at it. In the grand scheme of things, the conversation between them didn't become an argument, in a way.
The installation process was pretty hands-on, and luckily we had everybody there to help out. So we worked as a team to command strip everything and get it all installed. It was very fun, but very chaotic.
So the installation process was one of the best parts of being involved with this project, I feel, because that was one of the days where the entire class came together. We had help from not just our team who was assigned to the Peale Museum with Arts Every Day. There was also people who were curating other shows across the city who helped us in the installation process. There were also the high school curators who joined us in this process. So I feel there was a good 20 people in that room making decisions, having conversations. We made a lot of split-second decisions, and we had to make these decisions in a small scale as well as a larger scale. The installation process was very fulfilling to us. So before entering this class, I thought curation was mainly like putting stuff up on a wall. But it was great to know that that was like 1 week's worth of work for this class. The 20 weeks before that were what actually made that possible, and those included talking to people, getting your resources, getting the work, having loans put in place, having an insurance. So overall, I feel like that's not something I would have learned in that depth by just being in a typical classroom. So I feel like this being my first ever experience with curation, it's taught me a lot, and it's taught me what to be mindful of in my future experiences.
Within my prior education in terms of curation and exhibitions and museum studies, it has been a lot about the art and how the art communicates with each other, but I think EDS has really taught us how the community is 50% of the importance of the show. And without the people that are going to be present at the show, like what are you doing it for? So EDS has really opened my eyes to how much you can involve the community and how much you could represent within what you're doing and the value of that.
It was a very exciting thing, basically coaching students on how to weave disability justice and accessibility into the planning of and the design of an exhibit.
Our initial work was to teach one of the classes on kind of the framework of disability justice and the concepts of that. And we did that on Zoom early on in September to lay some foundation. We approached Deyane, would you consider paying some adults who are living with disabilities to give feedback on the exhibitions? The adults who are living with disabilities who we've hired as consultants have a range of disabilities. Yes. And this variety of people's experience, although you'd wish you could bring each one of them into each site, we've only brought one to each site and asked them if they had friends or family members to speak on behalf of others who they know who have disabilities and what they might experience in these locations. So the students take a very significant role. One, I asked the students to prepare 3 to 5 questions for the consultant in advance of the visit. And that gave them a chance to think through what they really wanted to hear. So the consultants all came with that list of questions. I asked the students to gather us in a quiet space first so we could introduce ourselves to each other, to tell them about the exhibition, and then to lead a tour, and then to lead us in a feedback conversation. This has I think put them in the role of taking a lot of responsibility and accountability.
Those are curators who are going to go into this work with a much better understanding of accessibility.
The feedback from our consultants has been so positive. They've felt heard, they've felt respected, and they've enjoyed these exhibitions despite the fact that they were filled with barriers for them. That they could be invited in and point out was extremely meaningful to them. What I've also been able to get is feedback from the student curators and the gallery staff that they plan to make some modifications, not just only for this exhibition, but for their practice in the future. And of course, that's the big goal, which is that this has an impact long term. And I think Melanie and I have a dream that we've created kind of a cadre of adults who are living with disabilities who could be deployed to a variety of situations throughout the city.
To continue this work.
We've also been able to inform one site to another some good practices that were evident. Hopefully they learn from each other. That's the other thing that I wish to do as we wrap up, is sort of highlight the ingenuity of the student curators and the practices and the things that really sparked connection and comfort and removed barriers for the visitors. And so that piece of work grew very organically, fundamentally rooted in a practice that Melanie and I are long connected with in disability justice, which is nothing about us without us.
People do tend to, with all marginalized communities, think about what they think, what the dominant culture thinks that the people in the marginalized communities need. And in doing that, they rarely ever hit the mark, because if you just ask the people who are living with the situation or who are in that marginalized community, they'll tell you what they need.
So I really, really appreciate that you're going to take all of this experience, and especially my community's experience, and turn it to the future. And so I'm looking forward to what's going to come out of this, and I'm going to feel like I had a hand in it.
It has been a pleasure and an honor to be part of the accessibility consulting team. The experience was new and very interesting to me, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
Art needs to be experienced by people of all abilities, and that's something that I don't think the art world has necessarily always wrapped its head around. These museums, as you said, they're learning so much with this, and hopefully these things will stick.
There's something about this work that's very personal and sort of has the flavor of Baltimore to me in it. The way we approach forging new ground is really built in relationships and connections with people. So the relationships that Melanie and I have with the consultants, and the relationships that have formed among class and students and curators, has sort of held this in a powerful web of relationship. And I think my belief, and I think our shared belief, is that change comes out of relationships and connections.
Yes.
That's why a square is kind of helpful. Since install, we have been producing our public programs as well as showcasing our exhibitions. We've been learning more about curatorial practice. We've been learning more about institutions that are local to us, as well as institutions and museums that are outside of the state of Maryland. I counted. We went to over 16 different places, including the places that we went to 9. We had our 9 institutions, but we also visited the Blind Institute. We also visited New York. We went to the Brooklyn Museum, went to the Met. We went to the Great Blacks and Wax Museum. We went to the Afro Archives. We have gone to so many institutions across the city, looking at how they put on exhibitions, how they work with their collections, and how they tell their stories. Most of the public programs focused on storytelling, I'll say that. Some students have taken with something more direct, like quilting projects, where people have quilted and made quilt squares, which have told stories. Some public programs implemented performances such as poetry, acting, puppetry, rap, and jazz. Every student in every venue is charged with producing one exhibition and one public program. And so the students at Every site have done that. They have one or more pieces from Elizabeth Talford Scott, and those pieces, most of the exhibitions have works that are in conversation as well with her, with different themes and different contexts behind them. So we partied all night long and turned JELMA into a club, but we had a great time that night. And we also gave away the quilt that we made as a class. The closing reception really, I think, put everything kind of into perspective for everyone. People came from all over the city to celebrate with us and tell us the great time that they had.
One of the things is, I always say, where are you, okay? Where are you in the universe? Where are you on the planet? Where are you in Baltimore? And that's what Mama Liz's art has taught all of us, is to understand where we are and to know where your mind can go. So to the EDS students, right, when y'all go forward in life, when y'all hit them roads, hit them bumps, if you ever lose sight of what you're doing, come back to this moment.
This course has been an immense opportunity. I'd like to focus on a particular moment in my personal journey, when MCHC first acquired Elizabeth Talford Scott's quilt, Abstract No. 1. When it was unfolded, we pored over every fabric and stitch. I was struck with the thought, how can we possibly talk about everything? All of the different dimensions to a piece by Elizabeth Talford Scott in a 2-room exhibition. Luckily for us, this course was established to teach students how to answer questions just like that. Seeing the exhibits my classmates helped to curate, I dare say that we were taught well.
When talking about this community initiative, and boiling it down to its core elements, it's really easy to lose sight of something. It's easy to lose sight of how much commitment and constant application it took to get these 8 student exhibitions up all across the city. From my position as videographer, I saw it in little gestures that over time became kind of profound. Small duties like cutting vinyl to go up on a wall, or holding up a quilt to be measured, became these beautiful gestures of commitment, service, and showing up. It's a faith in community, it's a faith in young people, it's a reverence for heritage, and it's a real openness to possibility and innovation.
The important part of returning to Elizabeth's work 25 years later in terms of her legacy to me is that now it's not just limited to a small group of people. That now, again, that the BMA owns 4 of her works in their collection, and 25 years ago, no museums owned her work. Now over a dozen museums own her work. So that's a big difference. That becomes this vehicle for people to come together, not just to celebrate, like with Elizabeth's work, but also to see its connection to what they're doing in their lives. Now that I can, along with the students and the museums, look at it through different lenses, meaning the lenses of the community in terms of the partnerships, but also in terms of accessibility, and what does that mean in terms of disability justice. The good news is that the landscape in terms of the arts community, especially here in Baltimore, has really expanded to be much more inclusive and to really reach out to different partners and relationships in the community. And I see that's a big change, that there's a sense of cooperation and collaboration, which in the past it was more about competition between institutions and organizations. The BMA, of course, invited me to the table to do this project, right? And then that invitation, not just extended to MICA, to the EDS, to the students, but then to the 8 partners. The fact that they now are reaching out into the community, that they have invited these partners, not just to the table like me, but literally they've asked them to help build a new table. And so for me, that's the most exciting part for the BMA, is that now this inclusive community includes outside their own doors.
The value of these institutions collaborating with the Baltimore Museum of Art is beyond comprehension, to tell you the truth. It's never been done before, and I'm hoping that it will inspire us to do these similar kinds of partnerships in the future. It takes a lot of work, but what ends up happening is that you have different perspectives, a multiplicity of understandings, of interpretations, but also investments and different kinds of contributions from different stakeholders that will create a more full understanding of what we think about when we think about these artists. For me, what I'm trying to say the BMA is in this next chapter is linking arms with partners across the state, whether they're big, whether they're small, whether they're one person, whether there's 200 people, and whether they're even in the arts world or not. The fact that we have university partners, the fact that we have small historical museums as partners, that's exactly what I want to be seeing in terms of us working across the table. And I would say, yes, a new table has been built. It was built because of the magisterial force of George Sissel, I will say. And I hope that we continue to learn from George, because what he's shown us is the more people we add to a conversation, the better the conversation is, the richer it is.
I hope that new table that's being built, that we don't know what that looks like. That the people around it are people we don't even know today. That these are the people from the community that really will contribute and be partners in the future in the kind of decision making that goes on in the museum field here. The fact that these 21 undergraduate and graduate students from 4 different universities have now reached out into the community with 4 other museums, including the BMA. That is something I would have never imagined.
And so we want to show you all what a community initiative looks like. Because whether you know it or not,
we did it. We really excelled. I think we really knocked it out the park. How do I say? I don't want to cry, but I'm going to cry. I saw a lot of people grow, for real. And I think that that's probably the thing that touches me the most. I saw a lot of students grow, and I'm really proud of them.